Everybody okay to start? Because it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'll declare the meeting open. Rachel, would you like to do the Noongar version of the Welcome to Country?
Thank you, Jenny. I will give it a crack. I don't say it as often as you or Frank. So, Nalakadich wajak mort kain kadak nija walilap buja wer jinning wajak kadajing wer knitting bula yay.
We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walyalup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. We do have an apology from the Mayor, who is heading to Canberra as we speak, I think, and Councillor Thompson's just turned up. That is him, isn't it? No, he's not here. Sorry. I'm looking in the wrong place. Councillor Thompson will be 10 minutes late. Sorry. Disclosures of interest by members. Councillor Bucci.
Yes, impartiality with FPOL 2306-3 sponsorship request, Croatian folkloric group. I know of them. I've seen them perform. I don't think it would be a problem, so I'll be voting. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Vucic, could you just tell me which item that one is?
That was FPOL 2306-3.
Three, yep. Sorry. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
Sponsorship request.
Okay, Councillor Moughlin, sorry.
Thank you, and I'll declare an impartiality interest on 23067, the RecLink Cup application, and I've participated in the RecLink Cup over the last couple of years, and I'll be staying and participating and voting.
Okay, thank you. All right. Responses to previous public questions taken on notice. There are none. Public question time. Do we have any members? I haven't got a list here. So are there any members of the public who wish to speak?
Yeah, what's the mayor in Canberra for?
I don't know, but I gather it's up to her while she's in Canberra. Did you wish to speak or not? No, just here to. Yep, thank you. Nobody else? Thank you. Petitions, we have none, I don't believe. Well, we have none, I believe. Elected members, submit petition. All right. Deputations, we don't have any. Special deputations, nil. Presentations, nil, I believe. Confirmation of the minutes. I'll move that Council confirm the minutes of the Finance Policy, Operations and Legislations Committee dated 10th of May 2023, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Elected member communication, is there any? No. Reports and recommendations, there are none. We go on to committee delegation. Could I ask if you are here to speak, to listen to any particular item, or are you just happy to stay in the audience and listen through? Okay, great, thanks. Yep, wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we'll go to traffic calming petitions. This is FPOL number 1, 23061. I'll move that item. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. And yeah, I wanted to start by thanking officers for their response to the previous presentation of the petitions, and particularly Kevin coming and spending time with the petitioners in Hilton, both Jemima, who was leading the Bromley, and Alice leading the Oldham Crescent petitions. And yeah, I suppose we kind of talk to this a little bit later in terms of the policy that's coming forward as well. But the ability or rather the response to come and have time, conversation, consulting with community members has meant that those community members have felt far more heard about what the issues particularly were. And also by having staff out there, some of those intangibles that don't get picked up by traffic surveys were identified. So just being able to stand in the on Oldham Crescent and see the movement of cars and seeing that they all like to hang in the middle of the road as opposed to driving on the assigned side, and also then being on Bromley as well and just seeing the streetscape and even just picking up small parts to see the trees and where the trucks had gone through there and clipped the trees, you get a good sense that it's a regular occurrence. So want to acknowledge Kevin and Graham's team for coming out and spending some time there. I just wanted to pick up on part D of the motion and just talk to that particularly as well. And today the new Coles in Hilton opened, and certainly whilst this here, and I don't want to muddy the waters between the two, but the survey in regards to heavy vehicle movement through Hilton and O'Connor, I think we'll certainly see some changes in vehicle movements and whether that's heavy or light vehicles. And I know there's a commitment from the staff to have a look and understand what those movements look like. Really looking forward to seeing what we pick up and how that may then influence the planning of movement through Hilton in the future.
Great, thank you for that. Is there any further discussion on the traffic calming petitions?
Just a quick comment.
Councillor
Just like
Kamada?
to echo Councillor Moughlin's statements and thank Kevin as well. I participated in some of those on-site meetings that we had, and the collaboration was fantastic. And I think that it's something that was really appreciated by the residents involved. So thank you.
Great. Is there any further discussion? So I'll put the motion that's before us. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I'll now move FPOL 2306-2, which is the parklet application for 96 High Street. Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, if there's no discussion, I'll put the motion that's before us. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. You against? For it, so carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll move FPOL item 2306-3, which is the sponsorship request from the Croatian folkloric group. And Councillor Vucic has declared an interest, but impartiality interest, but will stay in the chamber and vote. So I'll move the motion for that. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on the recommendation? Okay, all those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. We now move, so they were all committee delegation decisions, so they've been determined tonight. We'll now move on to council decisions. So the following items will go on to full council. So I'll move FPOL 2306-4, which is Delegated Authority Register Review 2324. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. Is there any discussion on this one? All those in favour? That is unanimous. I might just ask, I'll probably get every single one now. People would like to speak on 5? Yes? Councillor Pemberton. Traffic calming policy? Yes. Reclink? No? Nobody? Okay. Destination development strategic plan? Nobody? Okay. Disposal of encroached land, Barnett Street? Nobody? Okay. Proposed lease for 13 South Terrace? Nobody? Clancy's Fish Pub. Okay. Corporate energy plan. Sorry?
There's an amendment to that. So.
Okay. Yep. Corporate energy plan update.
No, there's an amendment to that, so I'll have to.
For the corporate energy plan. Yep. Okay. Okay, so large scale events. Anyone on that one? Okay. Well, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, we'll do that separately at the end. Okay. So I'm able to move, unless I'm wrong, item 7, but Councillor Mofflin did declare an interest in that, but we'll stay. Oh well, anyway, it's been declared. So number 7, 9, 10. That's it. Yeah. I'll move those items. Seconded by Councillor Mofflin. All those in favour? That is unanimous. So now we'll go back to 5, yes. FPOL 23065, the Narrow Streets Safe Access Policy. I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Did Councillor Pemberton wish to speak? Yep.
Yeah, firstly, I want to thank officers for the work that has gone into this, and also the email and discussion that I've had with them over the last couple of days with regards to it. At first, I was a little bit concerned because the emphasis didn't appear to be where I felt was, the intent of the policy, which was around trying to make sure that pedestrian amenity was considered in these kind of really constrained environments where there's a lot of competing uses that cause a bit of safety issues and potential conflicts and so on. But speaking to officers, and I guess I just wanted to kind of share this with the rest of the room as well, in terms of the understanding around just kind of going, ultimately this needs to get through main roads, and therefore we need to use their language. And so I do acknowledge that that's largely what has happened. I guess I just had a bit of a query in terms of the additional information that was circulated this afternoon, and making sure that that was actually included in what we passed today to go out for advertising, because I think that that starts to kind of bridge that gap a little bit between what we need to do to meet main roads requirements, but also to communicate effectively with our community about what the intention is and what the potential outcomes might look like. And I do note that the officers have definitely articulated and reminded us, and I think it's a really good thing, which is that each scenario will actually be dealt with on a case-by-case basis in consultation with the residents in that neighbourhood, which I think is a really good outcome as well, rather than the idea that we prescribe a certain solution that gets rolled out everywhere regardless of the situations and so on. So I think this is an interesting one that will potentially be a little bit iterative, but I think that where we've got to in the information that has been circulated and discussed in the last couple of days is probably enough to start that conversation in a meaningful way with our community, so that we can progress it to the next stage of policy development or adoption. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? I'll put the item then. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll move on to FPOL 23066, traffic calming policy, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. These are special topics for her. So, is there any discussion on the traffic calming policy? Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I suppose, touch on the procedure or the flow of this process, and really keen for this to get out and get some public feedback as part of the consultation process, and really happy that we are putting it out there, and that proposed process that we've seen trialled in recent months. Most probably, just a caution in terms of that flow diagram, it does suggest that every step happens, but at some point in time there is going to be a yes/no decision that needs to be made, and I think we just need to, whilst we want to consider that as much as possible those community requests, there will be at times where we will have to say no, and it won't be just flowing nice and neatly through from review through to budget request and approval. There will be a time where we just say no, it's not going any further, it's not worthy of presenting. So yeah, I suppose my only concern around this is that it sets up an expectation from community that whatever request goes in does end up finding its way into a budget request. But yeah, I'll wait and see what that community feedback is, and depending on that, and when it comes back, maybe suggest just a slight tweak. And another potential for us to look at as well is in terms of how the reviews are raised. So we've got in there at the moment that it comes via a petition or a CRM request. I think we have a number of really good forums in the precinct groups around Fremantle at the moment where a number of these issues are raised, and I think what we should be making sure is that those voices are heard, and if something's coming through a precinct group, that it does get considered as part of this, and it doesn't necessarily need to have a formal petition process. But as I said, I'll wait and see what the public feedback is, and then take it from there.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, look, just picking up on what Councillor Mofflin just identified, and I just thought I'd share a recent example that is kind of exactly what you're talking about. So there's been some residents in the inner city areas around Bannister Street and Pakenham Street, Nairn Street, and so on, who have raised concerns with speeding vehicles and so on. And our guys have been really helpful in going and doing the traffic monitoring and so on. But what it's found is the cars aren't speeding at all, and unfortunately, it's just a handful of motorbikes. And so sometimes there's some really peculiar situations, and normal traffic calming kind of infrastructure doesn't really work with motorcycles because they just go around it. And so I think you raise a really good point, which is, what is the flow chart for where or when we say no, and what other options might be available. And, so in this instance, we've sort of talked about engaging police around, speed traps and that sort of stuff. Like, so what else can we do where there is a no, we're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on infrastructure, but there might be some other avenues as well. So factoring that in might be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I think one of the most important elements of the traffic calming policy, and having dealt with it many times over the years, is and the way these things often occur is that somebody contacts you and says, we have a problem in our street, etc., etc. And my response over the years has always been, oh well, we've got a traffic calming policy. I'll pass it on to the officers, and we'll do an assessment and see whether or not it meets the criteria for treatment. I think I can hardly think of any specific occasion when it actually has met the criteria, but that's not the point. The point is that I think before it's probably at that very stage when people first contact you, you actually need to be able to provide them with a simple sheet about these are the criteria that we take into place, because very often the perception of speed is from a resident is not the same as the actual speeds that's measured. So I think it's really important that through this process we get if you like, a very simple diagram that when somebody approaches you about it or somebody wants to raise a petition, you give them and say, this is what you're going to be looking at. This is how it works. Now see whether you still want to go ahead with it, because so I think that explanation about the process, not only the process we go through, but what are the criteria that we take into account, and what is the, and so in other words, there's almost a handoff first off. That is that they know what they're getting into, and they know that this is the process that's going to be happening, and it's not just simply, as I can think of, one example where somebody's dog got run over, and that generated a petition in a particular street for a traffic calming, and really nothing you can do about the dog. It was out in the street. So I'm just simply saying we put a lot of work into that street, and in fact, I think from memory, we actually drew up a design that actually that didn't require too much change It actually just simply required people shifting their parking from one side to another. So there was a sort of curve through the street. Yeah, that went down like a ton of bricks, didn't it? But we have put a lot of design work into that to actually get it to that stage. So I guess the point I'm making is that we do need a simplified version to actually give to residents when they are thinking of actually approaching us about traffic calming.
Councillor Pemberton?
Apologies, it's committee, so I'm going to take advantage of the standing orders. Picking up on what Councillor Thompson has said, I think that's a really good point as well. If we actually had a bit of a cheat sheet that was, these are some of the things you can do in your neighbourhood with your neighbours to try to traffic calm before you even get the council involved necessarily, or rather than the kind of detailed infrastructure, kind of technical, expensive stuff. And I'm thinking about the mental speed bumps kind of stuff with David Enwicht and that idea of, and I mean, in my street when I was growing up, basically my dad and the neighbour parked their combis on opposite sides of the road, and that was traffic calming, and it worked. And so, like, literally, like, neighbours can do stuff that will actually slow down the flow of traffic anyway. And, maybe it's planting some strategic plants. Maybe it is the way that you decide to park your cars in the street so that it creates a bit of a natural chicane. I think empowering residents to take on a little bit of creative sort of thought around how they can actually slow the traffic in their neighbourhoods, particularly if it is, small residential streets or whatever in, the suburban kind of areas, where that is flexibility, because that means you've got an instant result and it's no cost to the city.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to pick up because some of those points were resonating with me as well. My concern often with traffic calming is it's reactive to an individual call in an individual street, because there is that perception of rat running or speed or whatever it is. And often when you look at the data, it's the same street as every other street. And there is no strong evidence of rat running, because it's actually the people who live in the next street getting to the shop via their street, and that's the most logical way of getting there. Or it's the person in the next street who's doing the speeding, not someone from the outer suburbs, as is often claimed. What worries me a little bit is that that we are reactive, very strongly reactive to the squeaky wheel in this situation. That's why we need the policy, and we need to make sure we don't just address the squeaky wheel. But I think also we need to make sure that we have a precinct approach. We have a network approach to how we deal with these things. And in South Fremantle, and I know in my own street, which obviously I had to declare an interest about, when that was made one way out only to Marine Terrace to traffic calm the street, sure, it was fantastic. It halved the amount of vehicles going down my street. And it doubled the amount of vehicles going down someone else's street, because they were simply going to go to the next street. And of course, that's happened systematically almost in every street or every second street in South Fremantle, to the point where we spend $30,000 one year fixing a problem which, frankly, I didn't think was a problem, and then generating the next version of the problem, because the traffic simply moved to the next street. And of course, that's exactly what's happened in South Fremantle. It's all moved to one street now, and they're yelling and screaming that we need traffic calming. So without a sort of a network, precinct or network understanding about what's reasonable in that area, I've always taken the view, if you want things to move slowly, you have many paths. If you want things to move fast, you have one. It's the difference between a freeway and a network of gridded roads. A network of gridded roads is exactly what good cities are designed on. A network of freeways is when you basically control all of those roads and try and divert everybody into one very fast-moving, free-flowing road. So that's sort of like problematic. So I want us to make sure that we actually also if we're going to take the time to update the traffic calming approach, that we also spend a little bit of time making sure that residents and ourselves understand what is a reasonable, tolerable network for even distribution of everybody's needs in a suburb. Because otherwise, I mean, I know now I have to drive home on South Terrace rather than drive home on Marine Terrace. And that just seems really counterintuitive when Marine Terrace is the road that I should be driving home on.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's before us? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. And that does go on to council, so we can have a think about it in the interim. Now do 23068, which is the Destination Development Strategic Plan. So I'll move that item, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Kamado.
Yeah, just more of a comment than anything. I acknowledge the work that's been done, and I appreciate the effectiveness of and the journey that. And at the IEM the other night, it was really good to hear the background and how we've got to this point with our destination marketing strategy. And it's fantastic to see that it highlights the fact that Fremantle's not just about bars and cafes, and we have so many diverse things to offer. In terms of arts, recreation, heritage, links to the ocean, your shopping, and so many other range of things. I do add one note of caution, and it relates to the other day on the way to a meeting. I was listening to the radio, and there's that negative side of that you hear from people, that perception that we all hear from time to time, and we know that it's a minority, but the challenge is how do we change that perception, and how do we ensure, and there are issues that we all appreciate are really great challenges, but to provide that amenity, safety, toilets, that's a situation that comes up time and time again. So I think it's fantastic to get people here, but it's really important that once we get those people here, that we can start to and as I said, it's a real challenge, but we can start to tick off on some of those challenges as I've just mentioned. So thank you.
Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, just to pick up on the point that Councillor Kamada made, I think what are we calling it now? The Destination Development Strategic Plan certainly addresses that, particularly in regards to the visitor experience and the need to make sure that that experience when people do come to Fremantle is a positive one. And I think what we need to do as a council is to ensure that we do put enough emphasis on the experience when people are here, not just about going and doing the promotion and other aspects. But also, I just wanted to pick up on the point in regards to the transition of the development of the strategic plan to start looking at that business investment in Fremantle. And I think that's a really smart move for us, because it is essentially, we are investing in what we want this city to be. We do want to have more people living and playing here, and we've focused on the playing aspect most probably in the first instance and built that brand. And on top of that, our opportunity is to now attract more people to live in Fremantle. And the only way more people are going to live in Fremantle is if we are going to get those people who invest to build new residents. And I would like to think that we really give that a good nudge over the period of the plan over the next 5 years to ensure that Fremantle is doing everything we can to set ourselves up for success in the future and help with the financial sustainability of this city.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour of the motion? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Thank you. Now move on to FPOL 230611, which is the Clancy's Fish Pub lease. and the Princess May Park Playground. I'll move that item. Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, look, I wholly support this. I do think it's a great initiative, and I appreciate Clancy's operators kind of putting forward the funds to make it happen. And I think it'll be a real asset for their business as well as the space more generally. In the line of questioning, and I do acknowledge that I did sort of get an answer, but it's sort of the answer I already knew. So I guess I asked my colleagues in terms of how comfortable you are with sort of, the ongoing maintenance of this should it be damaged, like so it's got the 12-month defect period, which obviously we are protected from, and then the Clancy's leaseholders will contribute towards the general kind of cleaning. The regular cleaning is clearly articulated in there, and that has a cost associated with it. I guess I'm just a little bit worried around more significant damage, and do acknowledge that this is a risk that we have with all of our playgrounds and all of our equipment all over the city. But we also know that nighttime public spaces get a thrashing sometimes, particularly when they're closely located to places that serve alcohol. And there's a homeless population down that way, as well as people with mental health issues and so on. And just kind of going, is this going to be robust enough to withstand that, or are we going to be up for major bills to rectify it, 5 years down the track? And will that be an expectation of Clancy's because they've fronted the money to actually set it up in the first place? So I guess I'm just sort of asking, how do we feel about that, or is there some kind of protection we can have to just make sure that it continues to be a really great asset that can be used by the patrons of the pub and what it's been created there for?
Thank you. I'll hand over to Mr. Hammond, who's going to. I just wasn't sure which one. I'll hand over to the Director of City Business. Thank you.
Just a quick point of clarification with regards to maintenance contributions. So as part of the arrangement we're looking at, Clancy's are committing to a $3,500 contribution annually towards maintenance for the remainder of their lease.
Which for minor stuff is probably fine. But if someone sets fire to it.
I'll just check to see if the Director of Infrastructure wishes to add a comment to that.
Sorry, not really a lot to add. As I said in my email earlier, it will become a city asset and we'll maintain it as we do with the other playgrounds. I would expect, though, if there is a contribution from Clancy's at $3,500 a year, and the parks teams are regularly supervising it, we'll watch and we'll monitor it for risk. But ultimately, yeah, if something significant happens, it is something that we'd have to accommodate in future years.
Just further to that, I guess it just gets captured by our insurance, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any further, Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, and I thank Councillor Pemberton. It's a great question, and I think Ryan might be able to help as well. But basically, nature play, like all play equipment, is covered by some pretty robust standards in terms of the way it's put together. And in my experience, where it has been developed, it's like most playground equipment, it's close to bomb proof. So the sorts of things that need maintaining are basically the wood chips and those sort of things. So that's just the soft fall, the softness elements, and occasionally things like some of the timbers might split and they might not become fit for purpose because they have splinters or whatever. They weren't robust enough in the first place. They have aged badly or whatever, and they sometimes need to be replaced. But generally speaking, they're pretty robust pieces of equipment covered by quite substantial standards.
Okay. Is there any further conversation? Any further comment? Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the investment that is coming from Clancy's into what is a much loved park, and I know they will benefit from having that in there, but Fremantle will as well. And from a parent who has sat at Clancy's many a time and the kids run around in that park, I'm sure it's going to be a much loved asset too.
Very much agree. So no further comment. We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Now move to item 12, the corporate energy plan update, which I believe has an amendment as well. So I'll move that motion, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. And Councillor Pemberton, you wish to speak on this?
Yeah, thank you. And look, I really do appreciate the work that's been done in the last day or two around trying to address some of the questions and provide a bit more information. I actually would like to move a deferral on this because for me, so I've just seen the table that has come through at 5:10 this evening, and it's very interesting, but I've only had a chance to glance at it. And I think there needs to be a little bit more thought, noting that, of course, this doesn't necessarily go anywhere. I mean, I'd be happy to refer it to council if that was the mood of the room. It is? I know, but that was actually a typo, apparently. It's in the wrong section. It doesn't need to go to council. So, yeah.
I think because it's on the agenda as going to council, I think it should go to council.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, look, in that case, and I mean, feel free to have whatever discussions you'd like to tonight, but for me, I need to go through that information. We still don't actually know how close we are to the 100% renewable, achieving the 100% target. So, you know, that table kind of shows which properties are currently under the WALGA contestable agreement that is for renewable energy, but I note that there's not many of them. They are the big ones, so they're probably the highest users, but having a little bit more understanding of that. And I think, you know, like there were some surprising bits of information in the report, and that's why I'm really glad it's come through, but things like, why is there gas heating in this building? Like the whole point of it was supposed to be about sort of net zero and so on. And I don't know when it was decided that gas heating would be installed, but that was a surprise. And also to the former mayor, because I kind of went, did you know about this? So if others are happy, I think rather than moving the amendments that I had sort of drafted on the run very quickly in the last couple of days, I'd really like a chance to work those up a little bit further with the staff. And happy to have any feedback and discussion from the rest of the committee now anyway, though.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I've also got comments that I'd like to make between now and council, where it gives us more time to have a think about it. So is there any further comment on this item tonight that does go to council? No? Okay, one thing I will say tonight, I mean, I've got other bits and pieces which I can just liaise with the staff on over the next week or so, but to me, this is a really good example of doing some work and having a look at what we want in next year's budget well in advance of us tackling the budget. I mean, if we can, there are a couple of reports that were flagged as needing to be done, and it would be great if out of that we could make some decisions about, okay, here's a bit of a plan about how we want to tackle this, and we want to identify how much it's going to cost. And well, I think we flagged that we might be putting a certain amount into reserve in the next budget, but at least this document hopefully will give us some guidance about how we want to go ahead and tackle these issues and set a budget for it, and then agree to it without it being confused with the flurry that goes on around the rest of the budget. It's a piece of work that we can do in advance and set the framework for it. So I'd be keen to see something like that come out of it because we will be starting to talk about the budget in about 6 months. So 6 weeks, 6 months, no, 6 months. So, you know, it just seemed to me like, okay, we've got 6 months to sort this out and put together a framework so that we can, not 6 weeks, put together a framework for the budget process. So I think that would be well worth doing. But is there any further comment on this? Otherwise, we'll put the motion. and it will go to full council. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Thank you. I'll move the item 13, large-scale events at Esplanade Reserve, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion on this item? It was flagged as an item somebody wished to speak on. Councillor Vucic? Just separate voting. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Vucic is against. Motions of which previous notice has been given, there are none. There is no urgent business, later items, but there is confidential business. So I'll now move that the meeting go behind closed doors to consider the confidential item on the agenda. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour? The motion is carried. We'll now